Well, to Egypt now, where a lot of information is coming out today. Egypt's military, the very one who was trying to quell the protests, is now calling for massive demonstrations on Friday in order to confront what it described as Islamic violence. Yesterday, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi urged Egyptians to take to the streets to give out a mandate to confront terrorists. Meanwhile, more critics are saying that the seeds from Morsi's ouster were planted as soon as the Constitutional Convention was over, deferring to Islamic law on issues like women's rights. Additionally, there were bread and butter concerns, with Egyptians facing constant power blackouts. Also out today, officials say the Obama administration will tell lawmakers that it will not declare Egypt's government overthrow a coup. This move will continue to allow the U.S. to provide $1.5 billion in annual military and economic aid to the country. However, the Pentagon has announced that it will delay the sale of our F-16 fighter jets to Egypt's military that are part of that aid package. The planes were supposed to be delivered as part of a previously arranged deal with the military. The U.S. already has delivered 8 F-16s earlier this year. But with the Obama administration declaring that the overthrow was not a coup, who knows how long that delay will really last. Here to talk all things Egypt is Sahar Aziz. She's an associate law professor at Texas Wesleyan University. Thank you so much, Sahar. Obviously, I just covered a lot in that intro, so let's break these things down one by one. First of all, it's been a month since Morsi's overthrow. Where does the country stand right now?
Well, the country is very divided, unfortunately. Prior to June 30th, when the big protests started and culminated in the Morsi being deposed on July 3rd, one could arguably say, at least based on my experience being there, that a large majority of Egyptians were no longer in favor of Morsi. It was quite unpopular. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they all wanted the military to depose him and take over. So at this point, you have a divided public in terms of whether that was the right way to deal with a very unpopular president.
And we have seen a similar divide in the past when they were trying to figure out who would come into power, and it ended up being Morsi. There were so many groups that were playing into that, and eventually the Muslim Brotherhood and Mohammed Morsi won out. So do you have any idea where Morsi is at the moment, what his whereabouts are, and whether or not he would be potentially prosecuted in the future like we saw Hosni Mubarak was, and potentially end up in the same cell as the person that he helped oust?
That is a very good question. Nobody knows where he is, and I think that's a very disconcerting fact, that notwithstanding his egregious violations of law and very poor politics, he's disappeared. He's been abducted by the military, and there's no charges that have been filed against him yet. I suspect there probably will be. And I think that that demeans and cheapens the office of the presidency of Egypt. It's not about Morsi. It's about whoever occupies that office has, at the very least, due process rights. All Egyptians should have due process rights. And I think the fact that the liberals and the opposition parties are silent on this issue is very disconcerting, because it could be digging their own graves in the future.
Now, you had mentioned this. We are seeing this process of criminalization of presidents, whether it be Mubarak or whether it be Morsi. Is this just a result of it actually being a criminal process, or of just simply the newness and the ignorance of the Muslim Brotherhood on how to run a country? Or how do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood is really stacking up in the eyes of the people right now?
Well, I think the consensus is that they're incompetent, and they are very politically unsophisticated and made many, many political mistakes, some of which were in violation of the law. There are those who are their strongest detractors who believe that they're malicious and that their loyalties lie with some grander Muslim Brotherhood organization as opposed to their loyalties with Egypt. And those theories are the ones who really caused a lot of the problems for the Brotherhood, or at least pushed them.
And finally, we have just about a minute left, but obviously when Hosni Mubarak was overthrown, the U.S. lost a very big ally in that region. They've been very hesitant about who to choose next to support. What do you think of the government saying that this was not a coup? Is that choosing a side, essentially?
Absolutely. They made a political decision. The law, the American law, is pretty clear that whenever a military plays a decisive role in removing a democratically elected president, that qualifies as a coup and therefore prohibits aid. However, there are waivers and there are ways to interpret the law, and I think that the Obama administration has decided that its strategic political foreign policy interests trump any narrow interpretation of the law.
We've seen that foreign policy interest backfire before. We'll have to see how it plays out in the future. We could talk about this topic all day. I really appreciate you coming in. Sahar Aziz, Associate Law Professor at Texas Wesleyan University.